Great, thanks very much. Okay, so for those of you that have stayed on, thanks for listening to me and joining again. Those of you who've just joined, welcome. I'm Leon Ashton, Leatherland, and today I'm going to talk to you about modern Android device management with Microsoft Intune. First of all, thanks to the organisers of this event for selecting my sessions. As was kindly mentioned just then, I had one earlier on Windows device management. And thanks again to all of our generous sponsors to supporting this event. So brief introduction from myself. I'm not going to spend so long on the introduction this time because you've probably heard this, but varied working career. I started off my working life in the British military, in the Royal Navy. I was then a trawler fisherman. I then decided to have a change of heart and picked up a laptop and tried to fix it. Here I am 10 years later in IT. It's a great industry to be part of, really is. Currently working at a company called Power On Platforms in the UK. I'm an internal delivery consultant specialising in modern workplace technologies. I consider myself a bit of an Intune geek, especially when it comes to Android device management and Windows, but especially with Android. It really is my passion. I also work with Config Manager, co-management, and indeed I'm interested with specifically the co-management scenario. One of the founders of the East of England Microsoft user group in the UK, based out of King's Lynn in Norfolk. Recently had our second event, which obviously was forced to be virtual, which was very well supported. So very excited about that. And I also like to blog on Leon's IT blog. So let's start with a bit of an overview, a very brief overview on kind of where we are with Android. So in order to control things on devices such as disabling the Bluetooth adapter, it requires the interaction with various APIs on a device. So historically on the Android OS, these were not included within the build, within the source code of the OS. This wasn't a problem, however, so OEMs were able to take advantage of this and develop their own APIs in order to support. Ultimately, it's one of the benefits of Android, but also over the years, it's meant that a huge range of devices have been produced that suits various areas of the market. The problem is the fragmentation of devices has caused inconsistency when we try to manage them with an MDM solution. Introduced in Android 2.2, the device administration API was made available. But just to highlight, this was primarily designed for giving an app administrative privileges over a device. It wasn't specifically designed for an MDM solution. Let's briefly explore that a little bit further. So device admin enrollment, now termed as legacy Android enrollment, and as previously mentioned, wasn't originally designed with full MDM capabilities in mind. Problem with it, a solution doesn't provide any flexibility in the management options, which renders it unsuitable for BYOD scenarios, as there are privacy concerns in the way that the API has full visibility and control over the device. Particularly prevalent for me in this scenario, when we're looking at deploying apps, is the poor user experience received when trying to deploy a required app to a device, and indeed bundling settings with the apps to improve the user experience. Another kind of consideration in this scenario is that in order to deploy an app to a device, the device must have a Google account on it, which especially in a company-owned scenario, a serious kind of administrative overhead there. As of Android 9, some of the device admin APIs had been marked as deprecated, and they've been removed in Android 10. So these are quite crucial settings to manage the screen lock, disable the camera, and manage passwords. So no longer available in Android 10. Devices on Android 8 and older, they will continue to be supported. However, it is recommended to adopt the Android Enterprise management as soon as possible. So just going to quickly drop into a video here. So in order to enroll a device admin device, I need to install the Intune company portal from the Google Play Store and then sign in with credentials. So I've already bypassed that stage. There's a wizard that just kind of explains exactly what can be done on the device by that application. So as you can see, quite a lot that it's able to do. And ultimately that means there's quite a lot that the end user can do in that scenario. So I'm just going to speed this up because I've got a lot of content to get into. So they'll go ahead and enroll the device and then workplace join to Azure Active Directory. And skipping forward, what you will actually see after the device is enrolled is that an app will be assigned as required to the device. Sorry, I've just skipped by that. 1 second. And basically, this is what the end user will receive. Simply states that there's a requirement to install the Outlook application. So the end user clicks on that notification, and then that simply directs them to the Google Play Store to install the app. Okay, so not a great experience. I'll just skip forward because this was a particularly old device that I tested this on. Okay, so the Outlook app is installed, and then user will launch it, have to pop in credentials, which I'll skip by, and then logs into the application. Now, there's a focus inbox prompt. Typically, myself personally, that's something that I sometimes tend to turn off. So in order for the end user to do that on behalf of the organization, they'll need to go into the settings of the app and enable that setting. User then in this scenario goes to open the contacts app, and this is what they're presented with. So quite a confusing experience with being able to access their contacts from Exchange. So essentially, they'll need to be directed to a setting within the Outlook app, which can be pre-configured using app configuration, which is simplified with the advent of Android Enterprise. Okay, I'll just flip back to the slides from there. Okay. So Android Enterprise, implemented as of Android 5 back in 2014. This is where, for the first time, a set of APIs that were focused around the management of devices was built within the Android OS source code. It introduced the concept of something called solution sets. Solution sets are different use cases are used to address different use case scenarios in the enterprise. A lot more information on that shortly. Android Enterprise also introduced the concept of zero-touch enrollment. So the equivalent to your automated device program in Apple, your autopilot program in Windows. So the ability to purchase devices from a reseller and for them to be automatically provisioned to the organization before being handed out to the end user. The zero-touch enrollment program. Again, a little bit more on that in the slide a bit later on. Introduced the concept of a managed Google Play Store, which gives the ability to bundle settings with applications as app configurations. It also introduced the concept of being able to seamlessly deploy required apps to the device without any input required from the end user. App configuration there. Okay, So solution sets. So this is a significant area of value once you are adopting Android Enterprise, and it can cause confusion. So bear with me. If you've got any questions, pop them in the chat, and I'll try and answer them best I can. So these are designed to address various enterprise scenarios. Okay, and what does that mean? So first of all, you've got the work profile solution set. Okay. This was available as of Android 5.1 and is typically aimed, not always, but typically aimed at your BYOD or your company, sorry, your employee-owned scenario. So the full device is not managed by Intune in this scenario. It is just the profile itself. So the device enrolls, a work profile is inflated, and within that work profile, you're able to deploy your company apps and data and secure that from the rest of the device, and indeed be quite strict on the control of accessing that data from the rest of the device. Addresses privacy concerns unlike the device admin enrollment, so it's privacy friendly. And to enroll it again, as per device admin, enrolled via the Intune company portal app. So what I'm going to do is have a go at showing you the work profile enrollment. So I'm just going to come out of here. And there we go. So on the left-hand side, we've got my work profile device. First step would be to go to the Play Store, and as you can see, I've got the company portal application there. So I've already done the credential part, just so we can skip by it. So typically you'd be prompted for credentials, and then there we go, a wizard. So actually telling the end user what the MDM service of Intune will be able to see, and sorry, will not be able to see, and what it may see. So it's just addressing then privacy concerns. Okay, so accepting some terms and conditions, and then the device will begin to enroll. So what's actually happened here is, without even noticing it, can you see the badge in the middle there? So the badged company portal has automatically been installed and launched to continue the enrollment. Okay. And actually in the background, the unbadged company portal app on this particular device will be disabled. This is a Huawei P20 Pro device, by the way. You will see slightly different experiences for other OEMs devices. So just to reiterate, in this scenario, what the MDM, what Intune will be seeing in this specific scenario is just the work profile with minimal interaction into other elements of the remainder of the device. Again, not always going to be prevalent in a BYOD scenario. I've certainly worked in roles where work profile, well, indeed, work profile was the first solution set available in Intune. That was all that was available for use at the time. But as the service has developed, more functionality has been introduced. So that's the enrollment complete. Okay. Fairly recently added addition there. Just helps the end user to understand where they need to go in order to install apps that have been provisioned to them by the company. And as you can see at the top there, the Outlook app is installed, has been assigned as required to the device, and it's automatically installed without the end user having to do anything at all, which is, I'm sure you'll agree, a lot better experience. So on this particular device, again reiterating, Huawei P20 Pro, it's created a, it's on Android 9, by the way. It's created a work folder, which contains all of the badged apps. So as you can see, I now have a badged Outlook app on my device there, and an unbadged one on the left-hand side. So we launch the Outlook app, and then straight away you can see that some app configuration settings have been bundled with this. simply add the account, skip the prompt, and that's it. That is the app pretty much configured. So I'm sure you'll agree, it's simplified, much better end user experience. So I just want to show you the feature which is by far my favorite feature within Android Enterprise, to be honest, and it really helps me. So we can actually do, if you're on leave or you're at the end of the working day and you don't want to, because I don't know if you're like myself, if you see an email come through on your work email, I can't have unread emails in my inbox. So I'd look at it, and then that means you're not having your downtime. You're ultimately at work again. So what you can do on these work profile devices is disable the work profile. So as you can see, these have now been grayed out. All notifications, everything related to that managed work profile is now disabled, which I think is a great feature. Really is my favorite feature. In order to enable it again, you can simply launch the app and it will prompt you to turn on the work profile. You pop the pin in and you are good to go again. Okay, that's work profile enrollment. We'll get back to the slides. Okay, so that was one solution set. There are 3 more to discuss and 2 more to demo, so we'll better get cracked on. Right, fully managed. Nice and easy one to explain this. Android 6, available as of Android 6 and later. Used in your company-owned scenarios. I'm not going to say typically this time. You wouldn't use this in a personally owned scenario. Well, I would recommend you wouldn't do that. It's certainly not privacy friendly for a start off. Obviously, the device is fully managed. Nice and easy to explain. Now, as a term here, just to explain, you might see when it's you might see it out in the community. COBO, company-owned, business only. So Google used to term this specific solution set with that actual name, company-owned, business only. Now we've changed it to fully managed. I have since found out that company-owned, business only is a term that's loosely that's widely used in the mobility community to actually describe this specific use case as well. So the recommendation with this one is, if you're working with Android devices, there's a link in one of my latest slides as well, to keep up to speed with the terminology. Just keep your eye on the Android Enterprise developer docs and any blogs related to Android Enterprise as well, because terminology does happen to change from time to time. So enrollment methods, how do we get a device like this into management? First thing, just to highlight, in this specific scenario, the only way to enroll this kind of device into fully managed management is during the out-of-box experience. So you've got a device that's work profile, you want it to be fully managed, you have to do a factory reset to get it fully managed. I have seen some instances of certain solutions claiming that there's a migration to go from work profile to fully managed, but the statement is, and this is mandated from Google, it is only supported during the out-of-box experience to get a device into fully managed. Or indeed, there's another term, but I'll explain that later on, because this is going to be a heck of a lot of acronyms and terms flying around. So, enrollment methods. NFC bump. Okay, so you have a device that's got an app installed on it, and then you bump any devices you want to enroll off the admin device in order to enroll it into the service. You've also got I've called it the DPC token. So it's the enrollment token. I'll show you how to do that shortly with a different type of enrollment. As you can see, these are available as of Android 6 and later. Knox mobile enrollment. So this is a Samsung specific enrollment method, and essentially is your equivalent to your Android Enterprise Zero Touch enrollment, available as of Android 6 and later. The ability of being able to purchase devices directly from a Samsung authorized reseller and have them provisioned into the service. Interestingly, in the KME scenario, you can also retrospectively upload a device to the KME service. So you've got a few devices you want to be able to ship out, but you've already bought them and you haven't bought them through a reseller. You can actually provision them into KME. Cannot do that with Zero Touch enrollment, as far as I'm aware at this stage. The enrollment method, QR code. And then so basically what happens is at the start of the out-of-box experience, multiple taps on the screen, it will download and install a QR code reader, and you then scan the token in order to commence the enrollment. Okay, so we'll talk about fully managed. So the first part of the demo for fully managed is screenshots. It's during the out-of-box experience, and as of yet, I haven't figured out a way to do this other than having a GoPro on my head or something like that. It might be interesting and quite amusing to do that at a later point in time. So to start off with, and just to highlight, this is using the QR enrollment method, so the QR code enrollment method. This device is a Samsung Galaxy A5 2016 with Android 7 on it. First thing you need to do, multiple taps in anywhere in the white space at that screen. So again, it might be slightly different, but it is the very start of the out-of-box experience. You'll then be prompted for QR code setup, and you'll then be prompted to connect to a network. And then after that, you will have your QR reader app on your phone, and you'll need to scan the enrollment token within the Endpoint Manager Admin Center or the Intune portal. Okay, this is specifically for the fully managed token, and it would be the same process because you've got the same available enrollment methods for some of the other solution sets, but we'll go through that when we get there. Okay, so the device will then start to enroll. We have some accepting of terms. Again, this is an OEM specific accepting and mandating of terms and conditions. Then what will happen is the device will go ahead and it will go ahead and update Google Play services prior to enrollment. We then receive a prompt for the Chrome application. You need to accept and continue. You're then prompted for credentials. Quite a few screenshots on this one. There's quite a few moving parts to this part of the fully managed enrollment, so bear with me. Another prompt to click here to continue, and then the device will commence the enrollment, and then you get to this screen. This is quite a very nice experience, step by step, instructing the user how to move through the enrollment. However, this first part is a little bit confusing. If in your compliance policy you mandate encryption, then basically your end user will be prompted to go ahead and enable secure startup on the Android device. So my understanding is that is not enabled by default. Now, whether that's OEM specific or whether that is OS version specific, I'm not 100% this time. But what that would mean is you need to go in, so user will click on start, and then there'll be a prompt. You need to go into the secure startup settings and then select the option to require a PIN when the device powers on. So it just stops the Android device booting into the OS with that PIN. Okay, so once that's complete, then a prompt to install work apps. That's all the apps that have been assigned as required to the device as part of that enrollment. Then go through and prompt for registration of the device. And this is now when you are introduced to the Microsoft Intune app. So in the future, I would expect this to be the main application you use for enrolling your work profile and your, well, not your device admin, I'm not going to mention that, but your work profile devices. At the moment, it's the Intune company portal. So with fully managed, you've got to remember it's the Microsoft Intune application that your end users need to go to in order to manage their devices, which I'll show you shortly. Sign into that. Another prompt to register. Don't be put off by all these screenshots, by the way. It is a good experience. It's definitely improved since it's first been released into the service, as you would expect. It's a lot more stable and it's a lot better user experience now. So go through a few steps, prompt when done, and now this is where we can have a quick look at a fully managed device. So this is basically what the end user in that scenario would be presented with. Okay, so doesn't look anything too special. First thing to notice though is that the Outlook app is not badged. Okay, that's because the whole of the device in this scenario is managed, hence the name. App Store, again, not badged. So going to the App Store, the end user will only see apps that have been published for that device via the organization. Now, there is the ability to open up access to the public Google Play Store on a fully managed device, but just note that this is not the equivalent to an additional, it's not the equivalent of an additional solution set, which I'll talk about shortly, called Cope or fully managed with work profile. Okay, so the options there, I have to admit I was surprised to see that there, but it's just to give the additional flexibility if the organization requires it. By default, that option is turned off. Okay, that's pretty much it for fully managed. So we'll go back to the slides. Oh, apologies. Just want to show the Microsoft Intune application. So there it is in the middle. Okay. So those of the eagle-eyed among you will have seen in the out-of-box experience wizard that the Intune company portal app also was installed. It is required still at the moment for certain functionality, but I believe now that in fully managed, the app is actually hidden because it was indeed causing quite rightly a bit of confusion. So that app is automatically deployed as required as part of the enrollment, but it's hidden. I mentioned earlier on Microsoft Intune application, or the Intune app. Oh, God, stop saying Microsoft. And this is where the end user would need to go in order to get additional support, as per the support tab at the bottom there, or indeed self-serve on the devices to remove the devices, etc. Okay, one would expect over time for this to develop more and more, as it already has done. Great. Okay, so we'll go back to the slides. So that's fully managed. The next solution set I'd like to talk about is dedicated. Okay, so we've had, just to recap, we've had work profile, we've had fully managed, and we've had dedicated. Okay, so this is available as of Android 6 and later. Again, is a company-owned scenario, and this kind of device is your single-use device. So you've got a couple of options here. You can deploy, it's your kiosk device essentially. So you can deploy a single app kiosk, or you can indeed deploy a multi-app kiosk, enroll a multi-app kiosk. Got a little demo shortly just to show you that kind of experience for the multi-app kiosk. So it's really good, really cool. So device is fully managed. Device does not have any user affinity in this scenario. So it's not associated with an end user. Again, similar to that of Kobo earlier. This solution set was previously called KOSU, and again, it's an industry-wide term that's used. But as far as you're concerned, KOSU also means dedicated in this specific scenario. KOSU is more of a use case, company-owned, single-use. Enrollment methods, don't need to go through them again, but they are the same as per for fully managed. Okay, so I'll just go through and have a look at a dedicated device enrollment. Again, out-of-box experience. This is a Samsung Galaxy A5 2017, so it should be very similar. But this time, so we could use the QR code enrollment method. It's certainly the preferred one to use over the enrollment token because slightly less screens for the end user to deal with during the out-of-box experience. But for demo purposes, we'll use the token. So go through the wizard. The end user will connect to Wi-Fi, accept the terms. The device will check for some updates. And then when the user is prompted to sign in with a Google account for Intune, you simply enter that token. Okay. There's various tokens for different MDM platforms, but that is the one for Intune. And this is the kind of wizard experience now. So the user is prompted to set the device, then click on next. They will then be presented with the QR reader. And again, as per for fully managed, you then go into the Intune portal. You then locate the dedicated enrollment token that's associated with that specific enrollment you're after. So again, it wouldn't necessarily be in the Intune portal. There may be a way that you distribute this to your organization for your maybe for your power users who would be rolling this out accordingly. Once that's been scanned, the device check for some updates, and then pretty much that's it. The device will be at the desktop. Now, at that point, it does take quite a while for all of the config and apps and the managed home screen app to deploy to the device. So probably needs to be in the hands of some power users or team leaders or whatever for enrolling these kinds of devices. So let's have a quick look at this dedicated device experience. So as I mentioned, this is a multi-app kiosk. Okay, as you can see, this is you're able to configure various things on the managed home screen application. So managed home screens is essentially a launcher. Okay, and it's restricting the end user getting anywhere else into the OS of the device. Got some basic options at the top there. As you can see, I've published the managed settings app, the managed settings option in the home screen. Okay, that's literally all the end users are going to be able to access. Okay. So just to highlight the config, the types of configurations that are available. So I've assigned apps to this device as required. I've pinned certain apps to the home screen. You can create folders for your apps, which I've done. But also you've got the ability, which is great, to enable or disable system apps, which is what the contacts and the phone app is here. Needs testing, because some system apps are disabled as part of the enrollment, some aren't. One would assume that is OEM specific, so you need to test that. You can also, as you can see here, this is a shortcut, a web shortcut, so you can also pin them to your home screen. Just some guy's blog there. Don't know whose that is. And that's basically it. That kind of in a summary highlights what you can do. So there's quite a lot of flexibility. You can add wallpapers to this. I did have a nice wallpaper on here, but I've deleted the config in Azure to do that. Okay. So some other functions you can do on a dedicated device. If you're an admin and you wanted to troubleshoot this for the end user, you can actually exit kiosk mode. So it requires multiple taps on the back button. And then you are presented with this screen. So a couple of options on here. We're just going to focus on the exit kiosk option really for now. So you select exit kiosk and then you enter your PIN. As you can see, that device now kind of looks more like your fully managed device. gives you full ability to access settings within the OS, etc., and significantly aids troubleshooting. You see multiple apps assigned to this device. And if you now want to enable the manage home screen again, you just simply click on it, just launch the manage home screen, and you'll see the configuration again on the device. Just to highlight the manage, so what's available in the manage settings option is configurable via Intune. And yeah, just gives some sort of great flexibility, really. Also, you notice as well on the exit kiosk screen, there's the ability to access some logs on the device as well if you needed to provide them to support, and direct access to launch the Microsoft Intune app or the Android device policy app. I'm not going to get into too much about the Android device policy apps. I don't want to confuse things too much at this time, but yeah, you can launch the Intune app. So slightly different experience on the Microsoft Intune app on dedicated at the moment. Again, it's something I'm aware of is being developed and is going to be improved on, developed as a service. It's developed also. Okay. Doing pretty good for time, so I'll go back to the slides. Okay. So just to highlight, we've covered work profile, we've covered fully managed, and we've covered dedicated. So final solution set that's available is fully managed with a work profile. Yeah, it's not a great term, but that's kind of what it's called at the moment. So this is where the device is indeed fully managed, which is designed for the end user to have kind of controlled access to personal apps and data on that device that's been rolled for company use, and then you would secure your company apps and data within that work profile, and as per with the work profile solution set, be able to control the flow of data in and out of that inflated work profile. So fully managed with work profile, not currently supported in Intune. Was available as of Android 8 and later. Mentioned it was specifically for a company-owned scenario, and it facilitates personal use. This you will see was previously called COPE, company-owned, personally enabled. So just to highlight, as of Android 11, COPE in its current iteration of fully managed work profile will not be supported, and Google are moving towards a solution called enhanced work profiles. I've done a little bit of sorting up on it. I need to do some more, but essentially my understanding is that it'd be similar to the work profile solution set, but expanding interaction of the APIs into the remainder into the rest of the device. So that's going to be developed, and for Intune support, I would just suggest watch this space. One would assume that'd be through at some stage. So let's talk a little bit about bulk provisioning. Briefly touched on this earlier. So we mentioned Android Enterprise introduced the concept of zero-touch enrollment. So it's a bulk method of enrollment. No Samsung devices are supported, ultimately because they have their own solution, which we'll talk about shortly. So it means you can purchase devices from approved zero-touch resellers, and what they will then do is give you access to the zero-touch portal with your devices in, and then they can be distributed to your end users for enrollment. Zero-touch enrollment was available as of Android 8 and later, or I believe the Pixel 7.1 and later as well. So Knox Mobile enrollment, the equivalent of the Android Enterprise Zero Touch. a Samsung method of bulk enrollment. Purchase your devices from approved resellers, also, as I mentioned earlier, gives you the ability to provision existing devices you already have into the service using the Knox deployment app. It requires a Knox API version 2.4 and later as well to be supported. I've tested out KME, pretty good. I haven't been in a position to do so for Zero Touch, but if you take a look on the take a search in your favorite search engine, you'll be able to find out on the Android page what Android Enterprise page what devices are supported, and indeed what partners there are available to be able to purchase devices. Okay, so lots of content there. I appreciate it, you know, lots of terms, etc. And there's another one, I'm afraid. OEMConfig. So Android Enterprise is, you know, it's definitely a step in the right direction in order to standardize, attempt to standardize the way Android devices are managed. But there is a challenge though, and that's the challenge of which is particularly prevalent in some of the less well-established OEMs, in that Intune may never support the APIs in order to address the required device management needs. This may be due to lack of demand, among other reasons. In the event support is intended for a specific device, delays can be expected sometimes to allow for development time in order for support to be added into the Intune service. So OEMConfig seeks to address this issue, and what it does, it provides a solution that consists of a single app that's developed by the OEM. So for example, for Samsung, it's the Knox service plugin. And then what you can actually do is you can deliver the app via managed Google Play Store, via Intune, and then bundled with the app, you deploy a OEMConfig profile type, and essentially the OEMConfig profile type acts as an app, just like it does with the app config channels. So essentially it's bundling settings with an app in order to deliver value, so device management value in this context. So the ability to do all sorts of things. Samsung DEX settings are included within it. Other functions like disabling of Bluetooth. So it's essentially that this seems like it's going to be the future of managing Android devices, because it's less development time for the MDM provider, and also it's less time for the OEM to be able to deliver their value out to customers. So what this essentially means is, as I mentioned, no development time, and new updates to the OEMConfig version can be delivered in line with a device upgrade if it's an older device, or indeed a patch if it's a newer device. Sorry, my headset just dropped then. In order to take advantage of some of these settings, it may require additional licensing from the OEM. So as you can see here, this is the view of the Knox service plugin settings I've configured in the Intune portal. You can see some of the settings highlight that they require a premium license with KPE, which is Knox platform for enterprise. So just a few considerations to think of there, really. Okay, so enterprise handset validation. There's two sort of programs that are running. The Android One program is where OEMs develop their system image in line with Google, so actually with Google. And what that means is you get a very fresh, a very vanilla out of the box operating system on your device. Any apps that are included in that have to be approved by Google in order to get into that image. The Android One program mandates that devices all have an update every 30 days. And it also guarantees a minimum of 2 major upgrades. We used to call it a letter upgrade, but obviously we can't anymore because Android 10 has not been badged with a letter. It's just Android 10. So I mean, that's great. 2 major upgrades are kind of guaranteed with your Android One devices. So, but again, you can do a search in your favorite search engine. Look for the Android One supported devices. They're mostly Nokia's by HMD Global. They're mostly Nokia's. There's a few others in there as well. I'll be honest, so for one, I'm certainly going to be going for an Android One device next to give that a go. Also, incidentally, very reasonable. Some of them devices, they're not necessarily all going to be your premium handsets. Okay, so that's your Android One. We've also got Android Enterprise recommended program. So these devices have to have mandatory zero-touch support. They guarantee an update as a minimum every 90 days. Also is built in with that is a guaranteed 3 years of device updates. So it's kind of an additional year to your usual 2 years that is commonplace for devices. And with an Android Enterprise recommended device, 1 major upgrade is guaranteed. You may get 2, but 1 is guaranteed with a device that's certified in that program. Okay, so just a few kind of tips from the field, really. Device selection and patching. So what I mean by that is when you're selecting your device, make sure that it is receiving security updates at a frequency that is in line with your company policies. So our vulnerability is going to be patched on that device in line with what's required with your company policies. For me, you know, even if your Windows devices have certain vulnerabilities that are announced, and there's a certain time scale that your company mandates that updates are installed on Windows devices, should be no different to these kinds of devices. Because at the end of the day, they have company data on them. And yes, I'm sorry, but there's some more terms just to understand, because I've seen this cause confusion before. Device owner and profile owner. So what this means is this is a term that describes the way in which the device policy controller has access to the device. So when I say device policy controller, I mean essentially in let's say in our scenario, it's the company portal application for a work profile device. Okay. So ultimately, in a work profile scenario, it's operating in profile owner mode, and then device owner captures your other scenarios, your dedicated and your fully managed scenarios. Okay. And remembering when I was made the statement on being able to enroll a fully managed device has to be during the out-of-box experience. The mandate is, in order for a device policy controller to operate in, be put into device owner mode, needs to be done during the out-of-box experience. So just thought I'd highlight them terms there. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier on, try and keep up to speed with the terminology, especially if you're working with these devices on a daily basis. Saves confusion. Submit changes to the Microsoft Docs if you feel there's something on there that needs changing. I have a couple of times, and I think it's a great initiative. And the folks there have been very responsive. So yeah, just keep an eye on that. If there's something in the Microsoft Docs that are not correct, then submit some feedback, submit a change. Absolutely. Yeah, testing. I mean, I've said this before, time and time again, but recommendation for this would be, if you're considering rolling out some Android devices into your organisation, purchase a small set of devices. So perhaps have a look at an Android One device, an Android Enterprise recommended device. Get a couple of different OEMs devices as well. So maybe a Nokia, that's a new OEM, a Nokia and a Samsung. Have to excuse me, getting a bit tired now after the second presentation, not used to this. Yeah, very crucial. You identify the differences in user experience between different OEMs, because it is slightly different. It's improving. It's the whole point of Android Enterprise. It's certainly improving, but it's crucial that you test this in order to set expectations before rollout. So some resources. Always my #1 resource for Android Enterprise or Android device management in general. An Android expert, Jason Baton, his blog, excellent quality blog, really good documentation. Something for me to aspire to in my blogs anyway. So thoroughly recommend to go and have a look at some of his content. Certainly explain it better than I do. Twitter feed. I always include this in here because my Twitter feed is customized, so I follow obviously the people that I want to hear from. I don't use it for personal use at all. Indeed, I know people that have dedicated accounts for techie stuff. It's great. It's great. I've met some albeit virtually, some excellent friends out there who hopefully we'll get to meet in person someday. We collaborate all the time. It's always good to bounce ideas just for sanity checking. If you're seeing something strange in the service, and before you go to tech support, reach out to one of your tweeps, I believe is what the cool kids call it. Android Enterprise developer documentation. That's where you go to just check your terminology, make sure that you're up to speed with that, and you're up to speed with what the solution sets can and can't do, and what's lying ahead. And of course, our lovely Intune documentation. So the what's new and indeed what's to come in the preview. What's due to come in the preview documentation was also very useful. Okay, so just to highlight at the end, there's a raffle to submit to and win some cool tech. I have to admit, I'm not sure what that tech is, but any tech's good tech, right? And please dig deep if you can, and consider donating to the charity relief funds on the slide there. And just to highlight, the SharePoint conference is now called the Microsoft 365 Collaboration Conference, with that event scheduled next year. I'd love to attend. It'd be great to go to Vegas. Never been. With that, thank you very much indeed for attending my session today. I'm exhausted, I have to admit, but it was great fun, and it was an honour to be able to present twice at this excellent event. Has anybody got any questions at all?
Yes, there's a question. Why is a QR code for dedicated device limited in time?
Why is it limited in time? Let's have a look. Can I see the chat as well? Yes. Limited in time. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. So it's not just specific to dedicated devices. You can use a QR code on dedicated or fully managed if the OS is at Android 7 or later. See how I'd answer that one. Okay. So don't know if that answers the question.
Yes, it's a thanks.
Cool. Can't see any more in there.
I think we are almost done with this.
Okay. Brilliant.